Hello everyone and welcome to our Wednesday night Browns Insider. I am Dan Labbe. Of course you know Cabot. Joining us for the first time this season, Branson and Wright on our Wednesday night show. Glad to have you with us as always, and if you're out there watching, jump down in the comments, sign in with your cleveland.com account, and ask your questions, leave your comments. We'll get to whatever we can throughout the show, and a lot to get to as it is Steelers week. And guys, it's Steelers week with a little meaning. The Browns are 2-2. Would have been very different had they not staged that historic comeback the other day. But Steelers week at 2-2 a lot different than Steelers week at 1-3.
You know what, it really is. I mean, you know, if they can win this game, they are right in the thick of it in the AFC North. And, you know, obviously they have to win a division game. They haven't done that yet. They're 0-2 in division. So they've got to win this. It's a huge game. And, you know what, and they need to avenge the loss in Pittsburgh. So there's all kinds of drama associated with this game.
You know, we talked in Tennessee about if they would have lost, been the same old Browns. I don't know if they lose this, if it's the same old Browns, but not saying that they're going to lose this game, but it's certainly a different team, and I've been pleasantly surprised on how they played this year. And I'm sure the Browns will want to pick up where they left off in game one against the Steelers, pick up that third and fourth quarter, and, you know, keep it going to at least start instead of trying to play catch up.
Yeah, forget that first half against Pittsburgh. Just do what you did in the second half. And going back to that Tennessee game, I mean, it's been, 3 days now. I still don't know how to feel about that game. Because, on the one hand, you came back, you won, you fought back. That certainly shows the character of this team. It shows the character of your quarterback. At the same time, you were down 28-3 to the Tennessee Titans, who aren't the best team in the NFL. I don't know, I mean, how do you guys feel about that game 3 days after the fact now?
Well, I think the main thing that you have to look at in that game is, would they have won the game if Jake Locker wasn't knocked out of that football game?
Yeah.
Now again, Charlie Whitehurst did throw 2 touchdown passes, and of course that helped, but he was unable to generate anything in the second half of the football game. And I just think that Jake Locker was on fire. He was amazing. He was getting out of the pocket. He was using his feet. He was running all over the place, and they had no answer for him. And I have to think that it would have been a much more difficult football game in the second half. So I think you have to temper the enthusiasm a little bit. Like you said, it was great that they came back. They showed a lot of character. They made a lot of big plays. There were plenty of those to go around. Things went right, but you know, I think you do have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt.
Yeah, you have to pump the brakes, as you said, Mary Kay, but man, Tennessee, the play calling that they had in the second half, throwing the ball, they should have been running the ball, going forward in fourth and this much, it wouldn't have been an inch, going forward at that time. You know, for once, the Browns are fortunate. You know, they got some calls, and that usually doesn't happen to the Browns. So when you're on a little bit of a run, I don't want to call it magic yet, but the way they've been playing and the way things have been working out, they've been fortunate in that aspect. But Tennessee is bad. Like I said, that's just a bad team. It was bad coaching, and they are fortunate that they won that game.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how many seconds the Titans gifted the Browns through their play calling, dropping back to pass with Charlie Whitehurst. I mean, you're talking 80 seconds, a full 2 minutes of game time that they gifted the Browns. So, you know, kind of like you said, Branson, things are kind of going the Browns' way so far this season. And they haven't always been able to take advantage of it, but at least you like that because it doesn't always go like that.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, it's early, and they have been playing well, but getting behind, as Mary Kay said, you can't keep getting behind. You can't keep just playing a half. At some point, it's going to catch up to you. You're going to play a team they're not going to let them come back the way they've been doing. So, but it's steps, and again, they're better than I think a lot of people thought they would be.
Well, when you look back at this game too, I mean, look at the breaks that they got.
Yeah.
Again, things did go their way. They had a muffed punt that was nullified by a penalty, and they had an interception that was nullified. So, you know, they really caught a lot of lucky breaks in that game to be able to pull it off. But again, you know what? That does mean that things are changing. When the breaks do start to go your way a little bit, it just means there is, you know, momentum and luck or whatever you would want to call it. It just seems like, you know, things this year are going to be a little different.
You know, and give credit where it's due because they're taking advantage. You know, against the Saints, they got the ball back somehow against that team. They got the ball back, and it was deep in their own territory at the 4-yard line. They took advantage. They put together the game-winning drive. Same thing against Tennessee. They got a bunch of breaks, but they had the ball. Brian Hoyer drove them down the field, and they took the lead. And maybe we don't see that in years past.
And that's the thing about Hoyer. I think coming in, a lot of people thought he was just going to be a manager, just manage the game. But he's won some games. He made some plays, especially against Tennessee. So when you see that, I'm sure the team's encouraged by it. Yes, they got breaks. You know, yeah, they're only playing halves, if you will. But when it comes down to it, on winning the game, they're there at the end, and you have to be impressed with the way they're playing.
All right, let's talk about Brian Hoyer, because we've seen some stats coming out where he's on pace to throw for over 4,000 yards. He's thrown 1 interception all season. I think 24 touchdowns is the statistic. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but this is a guy who I don't want to say quietly necessarily, but he's putting together a very solid season. And kind of looking ahead, if he can continue to develop. We know that contract situation is still unsettled. We know the johnny-manziel situation is still unsettled. How do you think the Browns will handle this moving forward?
Well, if he continues to win and impress and play well and throw touchdowns and not interceptions and win games and pull out things in the end, 3 of his 6 starts have been winning 2-minute drives. So if he continues to play like that, then by all means, you do whatever you can to wrap him up. And, I remember at one point, his agent was saying that they would look to November to see about maybe revisiting the contract situation. So, if he's got some victories under his belt, maybe they reopen those discussions and try to see what they can do in that regard. But like you said, he is putting together a very nice, solid season. I think he's surprising a lot of people. Nobody wanted to give him the time of day. In the beginning, in training camp, of course, it was Johnny and his entourage, and it was all the national media in town, and nobody gave Brian Hoyer a second thought. I mean, he was a complete afterthought. Now you've got, ESPN wanting to interview him, you've got Fox Sports, you've got some of the national media here to talk to Brian Hoyer. So he's completely flipped that whole thing around. And, we barely talk about Johnny anymore unless he's laughing on the sidelines when it's 28-3.
Yeah, that's the johnny-manziel story for the week. And I mean, that's sort of how the Browns drew it up a little bit. They clearly wanted Brian Hoyer to be the starting quarterback for this team and bring Johnny-Manziel along slowly. We're starting to get to the point where bring Johnny along slowly, if at all, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really something. And how about Hoyer's agent? Waiting. You said till November. He may say, let's just wait till the end of the year and just stack those numbers. And it would be really interesting to see that negotiation if he does pass for over 4,000 yards and still have minimal interceptions. I mean, it's a great story. But the one thing about his great year, we have a lot more room in the press box now. A lot more room around Berea because all that national media is not around looking for Manziel. So, good for Hoyer and the way he's been playing so far.
It sort of reminds you a little bit of 2007, remember, where Derek Anderson had that big year. The Browns decided to give him that contract. Brady Quinn was behind him. A little different, obviously. Brian Hoyer, a very different quarterback than Derek Anderson, but a similar situation, I guess.
Yeah, in some ways, I think you can say that. I think Brian is a better quarterback than Derek Anderson in that he makes such quick decisions. He's so incredibly smart. He's playing off of sheer football instinct a lot of the times. What he doesn't have in terms of tremendous arm strength, he makes up for it in getting rid of the ball very quickly and going to the right place with the football almost all the time. And when you think about it, he doesn't have Josh Gordon. Jordan Cameron is still not really himself yet. So he's doing it in some ways with a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And Taylor Gabriel goes out and catches a 49-yard pass on the first drive after halftime. That was a huge play. Travis Benjamin coming up and making really big plays for Brian Hoyer. So he's elevating the play of the guys around him, and he's making playmakers out of that.
Yeah, how about those guys, Branson? Sorry, excuse me. Travis Benjamin, Taylor Gabriel. They've had big catches all season long. Travis Benjamin against Pittsburgh had the game-tying touchdown. Of course, he had those 2 touchdowns against Tennessee, the go-ahead touchdown, the one before that. Taylor Gabriel, we all remember that kind of spinning, falling down catch against Baltimore. And
still almost scored.
Yeah, exactly. But these are little guys who are making big plays.
Well, what I was going to add is we're leaving Shanahan out of this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's done such a good job, so far with, there was questions about Hoyer, and I think those have been answered for right now. And then these receivers that they're not household names, and the way they've been performing within his system. So I give Shanahan a lot of credit for using what he has and not trying to, invent the wheel. But then it always goes back to the question, is it the quarterback that's making the receivers, or the receivers making the quarterbacks? And the quarterback, and I see right now, I think Hoyer right now is making those receivers, and he's just doing a great job.
The other thing to consider here, obviously, is the offensive line has played really, really incredibly well. They've adjusted very, very well to Kyle Shanahan's zone blocking scheme. They've got Pro Bowlers. Joe Bitonio is playing great, and Mitchell Schwartz has really stepped up. John Greco. I mean, it's 5 really good offensive linemen playing very, very well together. And then you add on top of that a running game like they have, which is in part because of the offensive line. But when you have runners that are running like Ben Tate, Isaiah Crowell, and Terrence West, when you add that all in, it makes things so much easier for Brian because you can keep the play action viable. Defenses have to respect that. Even late in the game, you can use it because they continue to run even when they fall behind. So I think the offensive line and the running game have been huge too.
A point coming up in the chat room, speaking of the running backs, we've seen them run the ball very well. One of the things we haven't seen is them being used in the passing game very much. Is that a system thing? Is it a quarterback thing? Is it on the running backs? Is that just not their cup of tea?
That's what I'm thinking, Mary Kay. It's probably just not their cup of tea. I think there is a transition. And if you look at those guys in college, they basically ran the ball. They weren't coming out of the backfield catching the ball. And it's something I think they'll learn. And again, I go back to Shanahan. He's not trying to force feed them into doing something that's not their strength. Their strength is getting the ball, running between the tackles, that zone blocking, which I've not been a fan of, but I'm sort of changing my mind. And it's working for what they're doing.
And, you know, it remains to be seen. Maybe they will use Ben Tate more in the passing game. He says that he's good at catching the ball out of the backfield, and as they go along, maybe they'll do a little bit more of that. But right now, what they're doing seems to be working, at least in the second half of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, all Ben Tate did was here for 2 weeks that he's not the best running back on the team, and then come out and be the best running back on the team on Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, you just have to give him a lot of credit. From the first run on when he ran for 15 yards and then all the way through that 13-yard run when he set up Jim Dre's touchdown at the end of the first half, he just, I thought, ran with a vengeance. He ran incredibly hard, and he ran to basically say, hey, you know what? Don't forget about me. I know we've got these 2 hotshot rookies, but don't forget about me.
Exactly. The motivation, the thing that the Browns and their staff doing all year, bringing competition to each of the positions to get guys motivated. And I'm sure we motivated Tate a little bit too. I'm sure, you know, a lot of these guys say, well, I don't read the articles and I don't go online. Oh yeah, and he certainly did. He had something to prove, and I think he proved it.
All right, let's talk about Christian Kirksey, because obviously he was fined for that hit. $8,268, the amount of the fine. What's the latest with Kirksey? He's going to appeal it, correct?
Mm-hmm, yes. I talked to his agent today, Brian Mackler, and he will definitely appeal the fine. However, you know what, I mean, this one on film, it's pretty clear. I actually think that it was a hit that they could have probably gotten away with a larger fine than that. So I thought $8,000 was not a lot for a forearm to the head and end zone. I just thought that, you know, that was a reasonable amount, really, if you're going to fine somebody. So we'll see. I think that, you know, they'll appeal it. It wasn't intentional, and I think that's a key here. You know, he's a rookie. He was trying to make a play. He was coming off of a block, and he had no ill intent. So they might have a case that way, but it's hard to win those appeals.
Do you think it seems like I saw him do this, and then I think he's probably aiming for the shoulder, or kind of like the lower area, but then when quarterback went back, and I think the danger of that happening, I think it came down to his intent may not have been to hurt him, but the way it looked. And from the way it looked, and how they came out with 8,268, what about 8,500 or 8,000, you know, the 268, I don't get that.
Well, you know what, there's a fine schedule that I actually have on my phone, and they are all weird amounts like that. It's all, you know, for this, it's this, and, you know, they have it all set up ahead of time. They don't just have somebody sitting in there going, what's it, $68 on the end of that?
Right,
you know, even though
right.
it seems like it. There's a method to it.
And I'm saying, I wonder if it was a Pro Bowl quarterback, what would the fine have been?
Yeah.
That'd have been
True. If that were a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning,
he probably got kicked out, took out his whole rookie salary.
The other reason why that I thought that it may have been a little bit more is because when a player is injured, now if he would have been knocked out of the game with a concussion, you can bet that the fine would have been higher.
Oh, big
The fact that he was checked for the concussion on the sidelines and came back into the game, I think mitigated it somewhat.
One thing about that, you look at that, and then you had, after the interception that was negated, you had a little scuffle afterwards. You had Joe Thomas rolling around on the ground with some Tennessee Titans players. You see a certain level of chippiness with this team, and obviously that kind of comes from Mike Pettin a little bit. We haven't seen that in years past. Speaking of the Steelers, this doesn't strike me as a team that is going to see their quarterback get a concussion shot like Colt McCoy got, and nobody says anything or does anything. It seems like a different attitude around this team.
Well, you have to remember, he was with the Baltimore Ravens, the years when they had Terrell Suggs, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and these guys. These are tough football players. Okay, so that's what he's used to, and he's been with Rex Ryan all of these years. In New York with the Jets, and so he comes from a pedigree of toughness. And his father was that way. His father was tough, and he was a tough football player himself. So this is what you're going to see out of a Browns defense. This is what we've seen from the Steelers defenses, of course, the Ravens defenses, the Bengals. So now the Browns have a defense that kind of fits right in terms of the toughness aspect. Now they have to add in being able to stop the run, stop the pass, and those kind of things.
Right.
But just in terms of sheer toughness, yes, you're definitely going to see plenty of that.
They have to work on the defense part.
Yeah, the defense part,
Yes.
that'll come later.
And I was surprised Joe Thomas got into a little scuffling. I never saw him as a guy like that. Not saying that he's not tough, he is, but to get in those little skirmishes.
He does. Joe likes to mix it up a little bit.
He does.
Joe, you know what?
Sneaky.
There's a lot of sides to Joe that we are starting to see now, including his dancing ability. There's a lot of facets to Joe Thomas.
Yeah, but I like it. I like the aggressiveness. It's not a team that's going to get a lot of penalties. There's the Raiders back in the day, they were tough guys, but they were getting a lot of penalties. These guys aren't getting that. And, if you have a scrum every now and then, that's good. That shows that they're into it, and they're not going to be pushovers.
Joe Thomas got into a little bit in training camp as well, towards the end of camp, and resulted in the team running some laps after. But
Yeah.
You're right, there is sort of that side to Joe Thomas.
He's
you
got
don't
that
see
side
all
to
the time.
You know what? When you see him, you talk to him, and and he's out, fishing and different things like that, and you just think he's just really laid back. But he's not. I mean, he's got that really incredibly competitive side to him, and I've seen him mix it up plenty over the years.
Yeah, he's probably not going fishing enough. That was the problem.
He's to relax a little bit. Let's talk about the defense part of the defense here, because someone in the comments saying, why are so many talented players? And you look at the guys, the names, the Krugers, who's kind of tailed off after a really good start, Carlos Dansby, Joe Hayden, we can list the guys on the defensive line as well. It seems like the talent's there, so why isn't it working?
You know what? I think, for starters, that it does take a little while to pull it all together in a new defensive scheme. You've got new guys working together. There's run fits, there's gap integrity, and all those kinds of things that you have to deal with. Who's supposed to be where at any given time? They have to develop a little bit of a chemistry. Oh, you do this in this situation? Now I get it. You know what I mean? And Carlos Dansby's calling the plays, and that's a new role for him. So it's kind of new to everyone. And when I did at one point talk to Jim Leonard, who's been in this defense forever, he said, everybody's just trying to do a little bit too much. You don't have to go find a play. The play will come to you. But I do think that they are going to need some of their first round picks are going to have to step up. I mean, you really need to see some tremendous play out of Barkevius Mingo before too long. This is his second season. Now it's time to see what he's all about. You want to see impact plays. Same thing with Justin Gilbert. Now, of course, it's only been a few games for him. It's been 4 NFL games for him. But his reps are dwindling. They started out at 59, and then they went into the 20s, and now they're none. And Barkevius Mingo only got 21 reps in this past game. So that's a combination of 30 reps from your number 8 pick this year and your number 6 pick last year. I asked Mike Pettin about that today. I said, give me some examples. Do you have any examples of guys, particularly high picks, who have started out incredibly slowly like this and have just come on? All of a sudden the lights go on and they go on to have a fine career. He wasn't able to produce any examples, unfortunately.
Yet.
Still waiting for some of those examples. I guess we're going to have to look for them ourselves somewhere. But, you need these guys. You need these guys to step up.
Yeah, because I'm, to allude what you were saying about the defense, it's going to take them time. I'm surprised they played as well as they have, which hasn't been super great, but they've stopped people when they needed to, because guys are in new roles, things are going to take time, and I'm surprised they played as well as they have. So I think as the season gets on, and I'm sure they're hoping on Sunday, it's Pittsburgh, it starts, that things are going to change. But about those rookies, I'm surprised also that your number one picks, and we know things take time and people on different timetables, but it's been pretty slow and noticeable that these top guys aren't playing as well as they were projected to be.
Well, you don't want Gilbert to be going in the wrong direction. Now, maybe they started him out too quickly. Maybe that was where they made the mistake, because Ben Roethlisberger just went after him. When he saw Marcus Wheaton singled up with Justin Gilbert, he just went after him, including on that final game-winning drive. So, maybe they thought too highly of him in the beginning and gave him more to do than he was ready for. But look, they've got young other guys waiting in the wings. K'Wan Williams and Robert Nelson were both undrafted rookies as well. So it's not like they had an Isaiah Trufant that was sitting around waiting to jump in there. They didn't have a lot of experienced veterans to begin with. But this week it'll be interesting because Joe Hayden has the hip injury. And if he can't play, he's their best bet against Antonio Brown as it is, and they even struggle that way. So this could be a long afternoon.
Branson, I think you made a good point, though, with the defense getting stops when they need them, because I think in each game so far, they have gotten that stop to get the offense the ball back. Now, it hasn't always gone their way.
Right.
Brian Hoyer misses Andrew Hawkins, gives the ball back to the Ravens. It results in the Ravens getting that big play against Joe Hayden. Against Pittsburgh, they did the same thing. They got the ball back in the offense's hands to try and win the game. It didn't work. So, you are right as far as that's concerned. When they needed to get stops, they have at least been able to do that for the most part.
And that could work in their favor on Sunday, because the Pittsburgh, their offense, they're moving up and down the field, but once they get in that red zone, they forget how to score. So, and that works in the favor of the Browns, and I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to that on Sunday.
All right, a question in the comments. This is about Joe Hayden. Basically, guys, what's wrong with Joe Hayden? You don't go from a top 10 cornerback in the NFL to a below average performer in 1 year. What can be seen on film, and what's being said by people? What's going on with Hayden? Obviously, there's the hip injury now, but
You know what? It is a little bit of a mystery right now, and now there is the hip injury to contend with. Now, was that bothering him before, and we just didn't know about it? Was it Charlie Whitehurst? No, it was Jake Labbe who threw the ball over Joe Hayden's head in this game. So, he is off to a very slow start, and it's very puzzling. He just keeps on saying, I'm working through it, I'm trying to get out of it. Today, obviously, he was idle. He did not practice at all. He's got the hip. And so now it's going to have to be some of the young guys are going to have to step up, and Buster's going to have a good game.
And it's interesting how these quarterbacks are going at you, and they're not afraid of them. Basically, they're saying, okay, you got the big money. Now you're going to prove that you're one of the elite or top 5 corners. I don't know if Joe is a top 5 corner. I think he's top 10, but right now he's not playing, I should say, as a top 5 cornerback. And he has to get through this injury soon if the Browns are going to continue to have some success, because no matter what, he's their best corner out there. So you need your best corner if you're going to win some games.
All right, before we go, Branson, we got to introduce you to a segment on this show. We do a little fill in the blank. So we do you got to just fill in the blank.
I can't do my homework.
We get so wild on this show.
We do. We go crazy. It's like you're taking the SAT.
Oh, jeez.
That's what we're after.
Get my glasses.
All right. So for these first two, it can be a person, it can be a unit, whatever. Blank is the biggest surprise through 4 games.
Oh, I'm first?
Sure.
Since I'm the new guy out here? Repeat that question again?
Blank is the biggest surprise through 4 games.
I'd say Hoyer. Hoyer's the biggest surprise. He's playing much better than I thought. And as I said earlier, I was looking at him more being a manager, but he's been a guy that is stepping up and winning games like your starting quarterback, which you want out of your starting quarterback.
And I agree with that. From a positive standpoint, I think that Brian Hoyer is the biggest surprise that he's playing this well. From a negative standpoint, I think Justin Gilbert, in my mind, is the biggest surprise that he's not playing well and that he's going in the wrong direction right now.
I'm going to say the wide receivers. I don't think anybody expected these wide receivers to play like this.
No.
Especially with Josh Gordon not being there. And we saw in the preseason, we didn't know how this team was going to score points. All of a sudden, Andrew Hawkins starts playing well. Taylor Gabriel, Travis Benjamin, Miles Austin, back from the dead, playing really well. Makes a big catch in this last game as well. So I'm going to say the wide receivers. Mary Kay, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but blank is the biggest disappointment so far.
Oh, back to me. I'm sure you got another disappointment. Mine, Joe Hayden. As I said, Joe is not playing like a top 5 corner right now. And just, forget about the money. Maybe it's this new system, another new system that he has to deal with. But if he's going to be that corner, if he's going to be that cornerstone, then he has to play more like it. And so far, he hasn't.
Yeah, after Justin, I would have to put Joe up there too, because this defense is predicated on having big pressed corners that can lock down the game for you. And, basically the opposite has been happening at times. And, you just can't have that. And again, he was rewarded, and he is the 3rd highest paid cornerback in the NFL. They rewarded him with a ton of money. And you need to come through after that, and you need to shut down the game and make those plays.
Yeah, you can maybe even include most of the secondary in that as well. Buster Screen, you saw him get beat by Charlie Whitehurst at 75-yard pass. Tayshaun Gibson has been good, but of course Justin Gilbert. Dante Whitner has been a little inconsistent, so the secondary probably, in general, a little bit of a disappointment there. All right, this is one that Chris Fedor gave me. Brian Hoyer is the best Browns quarterback since blank.
Say that 4 times.
Brian Hoyer is the best Browns quarterback since blank.
Let me think. He is the best Browns quarterback since, I think you'd have to go back to Bernie Kosar?
Cool. All right.
Bad. Well, I go with, that question is still too early. It's still too early. But for right now, I'm going to say Brian Sipe. Because they're sort of playing like the new cardiac kids, a little bit. So, for now, I say Brian Sipe.
Oh boy, this is a tough one. I think because he hasn't played too many games.
Right.
I don't know if I'm willing to go back quite that far. I think, again, we mentioned Derek Anderson earlier.
Where are you going?
He gave you that one
Spurgeon
really good year.
Brady
I'm going to go back to Vinny. Let's go back to Vinny. He got the Browns to the playoffs one year. So let's go back to Vinny.
That's fair.
Vinny intercepted
That's
Brady?
fair.
Well,
That's fair. That's a good one.
All right, I'm going to try that again. Brian Hoyer is the best Browns quarterback. All right.
That was much better. Now, obviously, he gets an opportunity to think about these answers to these questions.
Prepare.
So next week,
Oh,
we're going to
right.
have some fill in the blanks.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, that's fine, that's fine. The Browns record will be blank when Josh Gordon comes back.
He
So
will
they're
be back.
2-2 now. We'll be back after game 10.
He'll be back after game 10.
So 6 more games.
6 games.
Go Mary Kay.
I'm going to say 5 and 5.
5 and 5. I'm gonna say 6 and 4.
All right, I'm gonna pull up the Browns schedule here. I'm really gonna cheat. I'm gonna look at the Browns schedule here. Okay. Because remember, we were talking about these next 5 games before the Tennessee game, and we were saying maybe 3-2, 4-1. So, I think they probably, let's say they lose to the Steelers and the Bengals. They beat the Jaguars, Raiders, and Buccaneers. I'm gonna say 6 and 4.
They could be 6 and 4.
Yeah, 6 and 4.
I'm gonna be optimistic.
There
There you go.
All right. Johnny-Manziel was laughing at blank on the sideline.
That's a good one.
Johnny-Manziel was
That's a
laughing
good one.
at a bad joke.
I talked to Johnny-Manziel today.
Yeah?
I talked to Johnny-Manziel. I asked him what he was laughing about, and I did not get an answer out of him. He said he can't really remember.
He started laughing.
Yes, he started laughing. He said he can't really remember exactly what they were talking about at that time, but he said he was not being disrespectful. They were just, he said sometimes when things are going so bad, instead of getting mad, you just have to laugh it off. And that story is up now on cleveland.com. But no, you know what?
Do you believe him?
Manziel
Do you believe him?
he probably was saying, laughing about, oh man, we're screwed now, you know what I mean? Like, I think it had something, it probably had something to do with the situation that they were in, but he said it had nothing to do with the 75-yard touchdown, it had nothing to do with falling behind 28-3.
Maybe Connor Shaw's just really good at knocking on jokes.
Maybe.
Maybe Johnny-Manziel really likes
There you
him.
go.
I don't know.
Maybe.
All right, Browns Steelers, real quick. We got less than a minute left. Subject to change, as always. We got
Well, my predictions don't come till
subject
Friday.
to change. Give us
Right
a
now,
preview.
if Joe doesn't play, then I'll pick the Steelers. If Joe doesn't play, because even with Joe, it's hard to contain Brown, as we saw in Game 1. But without him, and with Buster and some of those rookies on Brown, I just think it could be a long day for the Browns. So I will pick the Steelers if Joe Hayden doesn't play.
But his official prediction will be in print
Yes.
on Friday.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
This is really a tough one. This is a tough call. If they had a better defense, I would be picking the Browns. But I am concerned about the defense, and Ben Roethlisberger obviously owns the Browns. I don't know who I'm going to pick yet, Dan. I think we're going to have to wait.
All right. I'm leaning towards the Steelers, too. I think they do a lot of things that the Browns struggle against. And I have visions of Le'Veon Bell just bouncing off of guys all afternoon. But, again, always subject to change.
Yes.
All right, that'll do it for another Wednesday Browns Insider. For Branson, Wright, Mary Kay Cabot, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.